because the previous time our country are not used to, but just a little bit change to the democratic country. But we difficult to well understand on those
Yeah. So you're
usage.
doing this one, huh?
Right,
Yes.
right,
Number
yes,
two.
Yes, voluntary regulation.
So, in short, we want to know that our answer is correct or not
Okay.
because we have idea about voluntary regulations. We prefer that it is a kind of norm which not regulated by the state, and it happens such as the limitation of every single media house that they will not publish any kind of advertisement such as reject food, alcohol, unlicensed cosmetic product or medicine, something like this. This one we refer to voluntary regulation. So we just want to confirm that this idea is correct or not.
Yes.
Is that right? Do they not take alcohol advertising? They don't. They don't have alcohol advertising here? No?
And smoking, right?
Wow. Are they voluntary or are they statutory?
Statutory.
Statutory, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's look at the voluntary regulations that are not regulated in the judicial system. So, okay. It's tough questions, huh?
Yesterday,
Yeah.
we discussed in brief differences between the self and voluntary. Is this right or wrong?
Okay, so self-regulation is also voluntary regulation.
Oh.
Okay, so maybe there can be nuance, little difference.
Yeah.
Okay, but really it's about non-statutory regulation. So statutory regulation would be things where they say you must not have hate speech in law, or you must not promote alcohol, or you must not. I don't know what the law says in Denmark. You heard on maybe earlier in the week what those laws are. So there are some laws that provide statutory regulation, and then most of the rest will be self-regulation or voluntary regulation. So the interesting thing is, in any country, you can't tell where is the boundary, because the press says, okay, don't worry, don't make laws for us, we'll make our own laws, and then you don't have to regulate. But if there wasn't self-regulation, then the government would regulate, I think. So sometimes the regulation comes first. So in Britain, if, for example, in television is regulated in Britain. So they would say, the government says, we must have a system where it's politically unbiased on television news, for example. Let's not have pro or anti any political party. So this is statutory. And then there's a government body which regulates that happens. But for the press, it might say, we want there to be a system of regulation, but it doesn't say what the system of regulation should be. So the government doesn't directly regulate, but there is a law, there is a statute which says your industry must have a regulatory system, self-regulatory system. So the difference is a little bit, if there wasn't self-regulation, there would be regulation. So, but they're asking you, she's asking you, in Denmark, which are the things which are self-regulatory, not statutory? So what are they? I'm not sure.
We are not sure.
In Denmark,
The Press Council, is it a voluntary?
Yeah.
Press council is voluntary or self-regulatory?
Yeah, I think, but according to our the training,
I think they
press
are
council is just
voluntary.
for the self-regulatory. They draw the rule for the self-regulatory
Yeah.
system, I think.
Yeah,
But Denmark, press council in Denmark.
yeah.
Yesterday lecture.
See, I'm trying to think of where the difference would be. How could you tell? If you break a statutory regulation, you're going to be in prison or you're going to go to the courts.
Yeah.
If you have a voluntary regulation, your punishment will be in the press council or in a voluntary body. And it might be like this.
Yeah.
Maybe they fine you. Maybe they say you have to pay some money, but really it's slap. You know,
All
you're,
right,
you're
okay.
naughty boys and girls.
Uh-huh.
But you can't go to prison for a breach of a voluntary regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sign up to the council and you say, I want to be a member of this press council. I promise to abide by the regulations, and if I break the regulations, you will punish me and I will pay, or I will do what you tell me. But if I don't follow the regulations, they can kick me out of the press council, but they can't send me to prison. It just means that I'm not regulated anymore.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they mean by voluntary.
Yeah. In Denmark, the state doesn't regulate any regarding to the press. But they have editorial code,
Yes.
and the media house produce their own separate regulations.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For example, when we study at the Politican Publishing House, they have their self-regulatory system.
Yeah.
But from the another way, we can call their self-regulatory system is their voluntary system.
Yes.
It's the same or not? We are not sure.
Well,
Yeah.
you could have both. You can actually have three. You could have an internal system where you say, like at TV2,
Yes.
he said 10,000 complaints they deal with,
Yeah.
and 10 really difficult complaints they deal with. But sometimes they might say, okay, this is not for us. This is too serious.
Yes, I see.
Maybe it can still go to a regulatory body,
Yeah.
like the, I don't know, press council.
Right.
And maybe it can even go to law. It can be a statute. So there can be, it's like this and this and this.
Yeah.
But normally, if you agree to have, if the government or the parliament decides that yes, you can self-regulate, then it won't interfere with court action. It'll say, okay, you're okay to look after yourself. But in a serious breach, I think that you'd end up in court.
According to my experience, before we joined to the Sweden, we face a very serious case concerned about that we are the wrong usage, especially it is concerned with the ethnic group.
Yes.
So the news anchor, they announce the round usage for the ethnic but just to their announcement it can affect to the ethnic group.
Yeah.
That's why our Ministry of Information
Yeah.
make many investigation to those cases.
Yes.
But it is not by our editorial. Is it under our editorial guideline? But at that time we don't know exactly this usage is shouldn't use or not. The stuff they don't know exactly.
No.
But after announcement, especially on the social media, they write down they guilty to our MRTV. Oh, the announcer in your MRTV, they use the wrong usage. It can affect the ethnic affair. At the time, our ministry are afraid to disintegration the country solidarity.
Yeah.
That's why our announcer and those are our chief editor, the director and our assistant director, they they call them who is the who permit or those usage, but it is from the outside private partnership that this usage, but we are investigated, but there is no how to say. There is no sentence or there is no charge on those cases, but we
Just a
have
shame.
to be shamed, right?
Yeah.
It's concerned with the statutory, but we are not sure in our country. That's why.
No. And I think that it should be easy to distinguish between self-regulation and statutory, but in practice it's not so easy because things operate in different ways. So I think it's a difficult question. But if you were to say, the first step is like TV2. He said we have a handbook, we have some guidelines, and you're saying your colleagues made a mistake because they weren't clear about rules. So it's good to have internal rules.
Right.
But it's not regulation, it's just rules and processes. And that's a rule. Another process would be, like we would say on BBC, no one person publishes a story on their own. Yeah, everything is checked by somebody else. Maybe they just read it and they go click, they go, okay, it's approved, and then it's broadcast. So two people look at every story. We also have a process where if I'm the editor, and I think, I'm not sure, I can go to my editor. So we call it refer up. Maybe sometimes it goes to the very top to make a decision. But that's not a rule, it's just a process, and it protects that things are correct before they're transmitted or published. It's really difficult to...
Really difficult.
Yeah.
Busy. But for those kinds of the serious case, if we have the voluntary regulation, is it okay, no, sir?
Yeah, I think that in principle, right? In principle, journalists don't want to be regulated by the government. They want to be independent as much as possible in Western countries. Okay, so our feeling is we want people to work freely, but it's no good having a corrupt press or a bad press or press that works for rich people or for one political party and not for another. That's no good. That's not helpful for us. So we want the press to be good and fair and honest and open and transparent. And so they write down the rules. These are the rules which I'll do. So every organization should be clear about, is it going to be accurate? Is it going to be fair? Is it going to be balanced? Is it, and then what will it do if there's a complaint? This should be clear. So the more you have these regulations, the less you need statutory regulation. That's all. So you take decision making away from government hands. Now it's a little difficult in countries like yours where the media and the government are closely integrated because who's deciding? You're not trying to be multi-party or something like that. But maybe you do want to be, you don't want to, your colleagues don't want to provoke ethnic violence. You don't want to provoke, lack of respect for women. You don't want to support criminal interests. You want to be professional. That professional, what is professional in your countries is a bit different to what a professional journalist would want in a Western country. But you still want to be professional. And you don't want to be in court all the time. You don't want to end up in court over an issue like a mistake. So if you have good, strong processes, you can say, earlier today we had in a live interview, somebody made a mistake, somebody made a comment that we think was, derogatory against an ethnic minority, and we should have corrected it at the time, but it slipped through, and this is our mistake, and we apologize. And then you've dealt with the problem. You don't need somebody to smack you, you don't need somebody take you to jail. You don't need somebody to fine you. You've sorted it yourself. So that would be the idea.
Yeah, because of for those kinds of the serious cases, most of the editor and chief editor and editor, they always feel worried when they are correct or if this usage is maybe right or wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But we have a business principle, especially on our their own voluntary regulation. We stand, although we stand our own regulation. We call it's according to this usage, we call the voluntary regulation.
Yes.
But sometimes, unexpectedly, we face that those kinds of serious cases appear
Yeah.
without accidental happening, and that's why we all feel worried.
Somebody said today, everybody makes mistakes. If you're broadcasting,
Right, right.
24 hours a day,
Yeah.
or if you're publishing all the time on the
Right,
internet, whatever, you're going to make mistakes. And it's just, how do you deal with those mistakes? Do you make a correction? Do you make an apology?
Right.
Do you have new training?
Yeah.
Sometimes, for example, some new problem happens. It could be, for example, issue of migration, or there could be ethnic conflict, or there's a new issue, climate change, and people make mistakes.
Right,
And you say, okay, we need to train people. We need to offer special training.
But in this country, especially in the political and publishing house, although they make mistake, there is no charge, there is no fine. Right, just to remind for those journalists, it's okay.
Yeah.
In here, there is no fine, except the very serious case, right? I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
just for those kinds of mistakes, it's okay, right? There is no fine or there is no sentence.
No, I think it would be very few cases which would go to court. Very few.
Very few, right?
Yeah. And it would be hard.
It's okay.
Yeah, we've got 4 more minutes.
Yeah, we form it.
We need to
BBC
we
is
need to
there.
do facts.
Right.
I don't have BBC in my
So
room.
many versions.
Yeah.
Not sure which
Yeah, but it's okay, right? It's, right.
Yeah, a mistake would be a court. Something that ends in court would be national security issue. I think almost always military, defence, security, or what might it be? It might be a racist attack, or it might be allegations of criminal behaviour against somebody, like a libel. So you say somebody, she's a crook, she's criminal. Yeah, no, I'm not a crook, I'm a respectable businesswoman. That might end up, but in Britain that's a civil case, it's not a criminal case, so you can't end up in prison if you say something bad about somebody. I talked to Group 1 yesterday, and it's also difficult. What we could say is, you don't have to do necessarily a presentation. You can do lead a discussion, or you can ask for help if you like. I don't know the answers to these questions about Denmark.
There are many questions. Even the 7, no? When we check how powerful about this people
We come to
how they worked it. Is it the one question? And the second question is what are the difference voluntary and self-regulation, and how powerful are they? When it comes to regulatory, what are the main concerns in regulation?
Yeah, so what she means there, I think, is why do you have regulation? Who is being protected? So it might be weak members of society, or it might be exposing wrongdoing.
Right.
Who do they seek to protect from harmful? Yeah.
public service.
Yeah, just making sure that people are not. If I have a lot of money and somebody criticised me, I can take them to court, can't I? Or I have power. But if I'm a very poor person,
Yeah.
I don't have these resources.
right.
So the system should protect weak people and poor people just the same as strong people or wealthy people. Yeah, which if of the different regulations impressed you?
And I know you are not the person who wrote that.
No, but I could have written. But I actually think it's, you know, it's difficult. They're difficult questions,
Right, difficult.
and they're good questions for discussion. But they're not. They
Yeah.
don't. They're not easy to answer.
Yeah.
That's why we have to address during the presentation.
But when we go back, when we return to the Karma, when we on Monday, as soon as we arrive here, we start to present those concerned about those topics at that time. But all of the participants, we have a chance just to guess that, just to submit our opinion, but it may be right or wrong. No, we are not sure, right? Who will be the decision maker?
Oh, Carolina will lead this discussion, I'm sure.
Oh, right.
So yeah, she says, look,
Right.
gosh, it's a 30-minute presentation.